Hey, welcome back to The Away End. I'm John Green.
I'm Daniel Alarcon. John, you missed an incredible episode last week. We really addressed some of the really thorny existential questions in world football. Like, for example, why does everyone hate Mark Cucurella? We also analyzed the chances of a hypothetical team made up of players of the Upper West Side of Manhattan and wondered if they would do better than Curacao in the World Cup. So I want to ask you, on behalf of all the people listening, why weren't you here last week?
Yeah, so I have an excused absence because I was a witness in a federal fraud trial. I was contacted by the FBI a couple weeks ago. They called me and they left a message. And of course, I thought it was fraud because why would the FBI contact you? And how would they even get your number? Well, it turns out they get your number because they're the FBI. They followed
that wasn't
up by
my question.
email.
I assumed that they can get your number. That wasn't my question. Would be more like why would they call you? And most stories that begin with "I was contacted by the FBI" don't end well. But go on.
Yeah, to be fair, the FBI agent, when he called me, the first thing he said was, "You're not in any trouble." And I thought to myself, I bet they say that to all of their potential defendants. But it turns out my image and name were used in a flyer, a direct mail campaign for a pyramid scheme. Only John Green, was not identified as an author or YouTuber or indeed as my most important gig, the host of The Away End. I was identified as a pharmacist and as a level 4 participant in this pyramid scheme such that I was making over $150,000 a year. And so the FBI said, "Are you in fact a pharmacist?" And I said, "I think we both know the answer to that." And they said, "Were you a pharmacist in 2018? And I said, I'm not a pharmacist then either. And they said, "All right, that should be all we need." And then they called back the next day and there were 4 Department of Justice lawyers on the phone. And they were like, "Hey, can you come testify at a trial in Milwaukee?" And I was like, guys, I wish you all the best with this and everything. And it sounds like a lot of people, especially really vulnerable elderly people, were defrauded by this. And I know millions of dollars were lost and everything, but I'm a pretty busy guy. And like,
I have a soccer podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called The Away End. And they were like, very nicely, they were like, "Well, here's a subpoena." And it turns out that when you're issued a subpoena, you can't actually turn down the opportunity to come testify. It's not It's not an optional opportunity.
Got it. Right.
So
right.
I found myself in Milwaukee, and
Nice
I sat in a great town. I sat in a witness room for 5 hours waiting to testify. And then I testified, and there were objections to my testimony. It was the full court experience. I sat in the witness box. I raised my right hand. I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I testified to the fact that I'm not a pharmacist and that I'd never heard of this pyramid scheme. And they asked me what I did for a living, and I said mostly I host The Away End, but I also do some other stuff. And then I was cross-examined for like 15 minutes. Where a somewhat, in my opinion, condescending defense attorney kept saying, "Well, I haven't read any of your books." And I was like, well, I wanted to say what I usually say in that situation, which is, well, they're still in print. But instead,
there's a library down the block. Go on. Yeah.
Exactly. You can get one if it's not important to you. Instead, I just said, "That's all right." And yeah, it was a weird experience, man. But I just found out today that the trial concluded with the conviction of these 2 folks. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, to convict or not convict. I was just there to tell the truth. That was what I kept telling myself.
That the long arm of the law. Well, I learned most of the things that I know about the law from the movie My Cousin Vinny.
Yes.
And so did you get a sidebar? Because I feel like those are so cool. Like,
there was no sidebar while I was testifying. However, my friend was in the courtroom for the entire thing because he flew to Milwaukee with me because he wanted to have what he called a high contrast experience. And he told me there were a number of sidebars earlier in the trial, but I didn't get a personal sidebar.
The little whispering between the judge. It's like, yeah. Love it. All right, man. I will leave it up to the listeners to accept or reject your excused absence or your absence. But I think that's a legitimate reason. And I'm glad the long arm of the law caught up with these fraudsters who were pretending to be you, and I guess making you party to a scam. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to my public reputation, but it's not great. And I feel bad for the people wwho were defrauded, of course. So,
of course.
Yeah. Anyway, what's been going on with you?
Well, we soldiered on without you. Sean filled in. He was called up, off
the bench.
Off the bench into the starting 11, a kind of game day decision. Did wonderfully, ably. And, like I said, we tackled a lot of those really great questions that listeners have been sending in to us. And actually, that's where I wanted to start today, if that's all right.
Sure.
Because we got an email. I'm going to set it up a little bit. And I want to shout out a dear departed friend of mine named Ibrahim Mateen, who was just a wonderful guy. We were friends back in Oakland, and he used to wear a glove everywhere he went, like just one glove. And one time we were like, Ibrahim, what's up with the glove? We were going out to this bar, and he's like, exactly, what's up with the glove? And he was like, and his whole thing was like, ladies are gonna just be like, come over and just, it's such a conversation starter. Like, oh, and what are you doing with one glove and not two? But he had a single and relentless talking point, which was loyalty. He would always talk about loyalty, and I think he meant it in terms of family and friends to whom he was very dedicated and generous and loving. But it's something I think about a lot, specifically in terms of football, soccer. Because there was a thing that my uncle, my tío Alfredo, said to me once, which I hesitate to share, but I will. He said, Danny, you can trust a man who changes his politics, and you can trust a man who changes his wife, but you can't trust a man who changes his soccer team.
That's a great line.
I mean, I was like 10. I'm like, wife, ooh, no, girls are cooties, but in politics, I was like, well, what do you mean? Anyway, so that's the setup, and I want to read an email that we got from a listener named Luke, and he says the following, because I want to talk about loyalties in football, specifically in honor of Ibrahim and my tío Alfredo. Luke says, hello, Daniel and John. I write to you as a conflicted man. I am a Canadian who comes from Italian roots, and I am at a loss. I never thought I'd see the day where Canada and Italy both qualified for the World Cup. What's worse, assuming Italy qualifies for the World Cup, which is far from certain, Canada and Italy will have to play each other. I have very strong feelings on both sides. Any insight from you two would be very much appreciated. Who do I root for in the World Cup? Thank you, Luke. So, I mean, first off, Italy might not make it, so you might be off the hook. But what if it happens? John, what do you think? What should we tell Luke?
It's a tough one because I feel a certain connection. My family's Irish, and I feel a certain connection with the Irish national team. I feel a bigger connection with the U.S. men's national team, but I think it's where you feel the connection. You know how sometimes you can flip a coin and say, like, that's going to decide who I root for here, and then the coin lands on tails, and you're like, wait a second, that's not what I wanted. Yeah. Maybe you do that. Maybe that's how you figure it out. But it can be really difficult. And I know it's got to be hard for you because you grew up in the U.S., but you were born in Peru. You feel a deeper connection, I'd imagine, to the Peruvian men's national team than to the U.S. But you've talked about how you have a fondness for the USMNT.
I do. In my case, it's an easy decision, and I don't know if this helps Luke. But I think of it in terms of who needs it more. And I really think a country like Peru, like the country where I was born, like we could use a win.
Right.
And I feel like the U.S. wins a lot. The U.S. is a powerhouse in global politics, a bully in global politics. Our economy, our cultural power is everywhere, and like Peru gets no love, and is a kind of a global political punchline now because we had just had our 8th president in 10 years. And so it's almost like, this kind of revolving door presidency that's kind of a joke in political science circles. And otherwise, like, folks don't know much about Peru. I feel like a win for Peru would be super important emotionally for the country. I know that because I was in Peru when we made the World Cup in 2018. And I know what that meant to everybody across all political divisions and class divisions and ethnic divisions. So, for me, it wouldn't be hard, Luke. It would be like Peru's playing United States, Peru 100%. No questions asked. Now, in your case, Canada and Italy, I mean, Canada, it would mean, it's hard to say because Italy hasn't even made the World Cup in the last 2 times. And so Italy's a country with a proud and important footballing legacy. And for them to make the World Cup is going to be huge if they can pull it off. And for them to go far, would be great too. But I don't know. What should we tell Luke?
I think that if you're going to base it on who needs it more, I think Canada needs it more because they've had less success and they actually have a pretty good chance this year to go fairly far in the tournament and they're hosting it. So if you're basing it on who needs it more, I think that's the call.
Yeah. Yeah. So in preparation for answering this is another bit of advice for Luke or for whoever who's going to watch the World Cup and you may or may not have a team, but I always make my hierarchy of loyalties.
This is key. You need it because when Uzbekistan plays Morocco, you need to know who you're rooting for.
Yes, you absolutely do. Because you can watch the game just for the spectacle, but it's more fun to watch the game when you know what you want, right? So yeah. John and I both prepared a list. I want to say off the top, though, John, these are not. I have enmity towards no nation. This is not a list of countries I like or dislike. It's just this strictly footballing loyalties. This is not anything.
Right.
I'm not trying to start a world war or anything. And I do think that the World Cup is one of the places that I find nationalism to be acceptable and appropriate. And I'm keen on it. I love expressions of national pride in this context, as long as they aren't sort of denigrating other countries. So I just want to get that out of the way because I don't want people to write me. I don't want Chileans to write me nasty emails, basically is what I'm saying. But John, you want to go through your list?
Sure, I'll go through my list. So first I've got the USA. It's where I'm from. It's, the team I've watched the most over the last 25 years, and heartbreak and joy and everything. It's who I am, whether I like it or not. I remember when I was in the Netherlands, when I lived in the Netherlands for a little while, someone called me incurably American. And I ended up using that in The Fault in Our Stars. And I think I am a little incurably American, even when it's against my will. So USA first. Then second, I have the Netherlands because we live there and they've never won the World Cup and they deserve they deserve to win a World Cup. They are incredibly strong footballing nation that has changed the way football is played in profound ways. And so I got the Netherlands. Then I've got CONCACAF teams that aren't Mexico. So Curacao, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Bermuda, all those teams. I always want them to do well.
Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, Canada. the upper west side of Manhattan, any one of them.
The upper west side of Manhattan, absolutely. Yeah. All those teams. So all those teams that aren't Mexico. Then we've got every African team. I'm going to root for every African team next. None of them have won a World Cup. It's incredibly exciting for all those countries to go far in the World Cup. I remember when Morocco made it to semifinals. Incredibly joyful. Yeah. Then I've got Peru because of my friend Daniel.
Thank you. That's important.
Peru over all other South American teams because of my friend and because over the years I've just developed a fondness for them, even though they're not going to be in the World Cup this time. Then I've got, and this is going to be a controversial pick in this family, I've got England. Because I watch a lot of English soccer, and so I feel connected to a lot of the English players. And one of my closest friends is English, and I want good things for him. He's a high school history teacher. It's a tough time to be a classroom teacher, and I want good things for him. Then I've got Brazil.
I'm not mad at that. I like a lot of the English players. I watched a lot of the Premier League, obviously. So, yeah, I'm not mad at that. Yeah.
All right. Then I got Brazil I like Brazil because my books were very successful there before they were successful in the United States. And I'm very grateful to the people of Brazil for supporting my work so early on when I really needed it. And I will never forget that. And then I have all other South American teams. South American football is just a joy to watch. And I know how much it means in South America. And I like it when Argentina or Chile play well. I like it when Colombia plays well. It just brings me joy. Then I've got every Asian team, maybe a little less of the nation's game than it is in South America or Europe or whatever, but still really fun. No team from Asia has ever won the World Cup. That would be incredibly exciting. Then I've got all European teams that haven't won the World Cup, right? So if you haven't won a World Cup, I'm interested in you. Then I've got Mexico. My least favorite CONCACAF team, are great rivals in football. But the thing is, when Mexico wins, I'm not that unhappy, except when they play us. Then I've got Italy. Now, this is going to devastate our friend Sean, our producer Sean, who is himself Italian. I also have other close friends who are Italian. I just struggle to root for the Italian national team, Sean, because they're very defensive. They're very negative. I don't like the way they play football.
I feel like that may be...
a legacy of the past.
That may need some revising. I also have Italy very low on my list for a different reason, which I'll explain. But I'm not sure that's still the case. But we'll go on.
We'll see.
I mean, just look at how the Italians. I mean, first of all, they're so handsome. It's hard.
They're
to
very good looking.
Very good looking team. So is Sean, obviously. If you look at the Italian teams in the nowadays when they play in Europe, these are high scoring affairs. They're not catenaccio as they used to be. So that might need a little a closer look. But this is all about our prejudices and sort of like what we the truths we've inherited over the years and hold dear. I have similar ones. So yeah.
Then I rounded out with Germany, France, and Spain. Spain being in last place because they win all the time. And tiki-taka, boring. No drama. No, nothing in it for me. I just don't love Spanish football. And I'm tired of Spain and France and winning every World Cup.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're good. They're good teams. They're wonderful teams.
They're really good. They have the best players in the world. And so, of course, they're going to win a lot. But I struggle to root for them because I love an underdog. That's the truth. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's always like the tiebreaker there, because if you have, say, two Asian teams playing each other and they're in your same category, John, I think, you look to see who's the underdog, Or, I mean, the other tiebreaker for me is like, do I have a close friend from that country, And that's important to me.
Yep.
As it is important to you, and I appreciate.
Is there someone I can text about this? Is there someone I can text whose joy I will feel vicariously? All right, what's your list, Daniel?
Yeah, okay. So Peru obviously is at the top for the same reasons you described about the U.S. Then Colombia, where my wife is from, and I have two kids who are Colombian, and where I'm currently living. And I happened to be here in 2014 when Colombia had that wonderful run and had this really powerful, beautiful team, and I loved it. Then any Latin American team except for Brazil and Chile. Now, Brazil, because they win a lot, and because I've played soccer with a lot of Brazilians over the years, and they just don't pass the Peruvians. That just might be my experience, but I remember playing a 7-a-side, and 6 of the guys were from Brazil. And it's, they're all speaking falando Portuguese. And I'm like, okay, I'm wide open here and no one's passing me the ball because they're Brazilians and because they're so good. And so they just don't see the Peruvian. So, I just hold a grudge, So then Brazil, because I'm not a hater. I just sort of like any Latin American team first, except for Brazil and Chile, and then Brazil,
Got it.
Then Japan. We have some really close friends from Japan, and my son's, my youngest son, his best friend their family moved from New York to Tokyo, and we went to visit a couple of years ago, and it was magical and beautiful. And I've had some really I played with some incredible Japanese players in New York over the years, and in Oakland actually, and just really love how technical they are. Then Cape Verde. That's a shout out to my friend Janine, who is Cape Verdean from the Boston area, and it is a dream of mine to see a game with her family, and I'm hoping that can happen. Then the United States, and I'll root for the United States in many situations, in most situations, because I do love the team. I want good things for them. I just always worry how U.S. patriotism is misused. Then Ireland.
Oh yeah,
because Irish are just like
Ireland's a good pick. Great fans.
Irish are great people, great fans. They're basically Latin American. They're Catholic. They have lots of guilt. They like to drink. I mean, they're just like, I'm just a fan. Never been to Dublin. I love Irish writers also. So Ireland's a good pick, I feel like. Then any European team that hasn't won the World Cup, for the reasons we described, I would put a slight asterisk there, and I'm like, of the many multiple wars that have been intra-European, I'm usually against the tiebreaker would be like, are they an aggressor? Are they not an aggressor? Which is, I understand that's like a kind of false historical thing because all the countries have been aggressors and victims at different points in history. But, for whatever that's worth,
Last time out, were they aggressors? I think is not a bad tiebreaker.
Yeah. It's like, I love Russian literature. So if Russia were playing in the World Cup, I would, and I like Russians. I have lots of Russian friends, but it's kind of hard to root for Russia right now. I find it hard to root for Russia right now, personally.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take.
Yeah. And then I'm with you. I think I would put, this is tough. I have Spain, then England, but I could really do it the other way around. I really do like the English team. A lot of players I think are really good, and I like Bukayo Saka. So England, Spain, right around there, and then Germany, France, Italy. And Italy, I want to say, is close to the bottom because the first World Cup game I ever watched was Bulgaria versus Italy in 1986. And I remember my uncle Pepe, when Bulgaria tied, like close to the end of the game, and Italy had played, they were the reigning champions from 82, and they had played, such a dreary, boring defensive game, as you were describing. Bulgaria tied, and my uncle, I remember this very clearly, he clapped his hands and rubbed them together, and he's like, ahora vamos a ver lo que es el fútbol. Now we're going to see what football is, right? So he was like, the Italians are going to wake up and show us finally what they're made of, because they're Italians. And, this kind of like, and I remember watching the remaining like 5, 6, 10 minutes of the game, waiting for this thing to happen that my uncle had promised me was about to happen. And it never happened. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, this sucks, And so I like I said, I hold a grudge. I love Italy. I have many Italian friends, including our producer, Sean. But that shit is boring. Lastly, Chile. And again, I could spend the rest of the hour naming all of my Chilean friends, but we have a rivalry in Latin America, in South America, Peru, Chile. We have a rivalry, so Chile's got to be at the bottom. Luckily, I don't think that's going to ever come up. I won't ever see Chile in a final. I did actually go with my great friend Alejandro Zambra, the incredible Chilean novelist. He was in New York and he invited me to the Copa America Centenario final, which was Argentina, Chile. And I refused to wear a Chile jersey, but I wore a red Arsenal jersey just to make him happy. We went to the game. And because I love Alejandro, I pretended to be, it was a boring 0-0 that ended up in penalty kicks, which they won. And I pretended to be kind of nominally happy because, Alejandro's a friend of mine. So that's my list. And Luke, I hope that helps. I really recommend that everyone make a hierarchy of loyalties, because it really simplifies things. And you don't want to, there's so many games in the first round, right? In the group stages. You don't want to be in a situation where you sit down to watch a game and you don't know who to root for. So do this ahead of time, prepare. You've got months to do it. I think it's really important.
All right, we'll be back after a break to talk about the U.S. men's national team.
We're back on the away end. I'm Daniel Alarcon. John, what's up with the U.S. men's national team? Talk to me.
So I've always thought of the U.S. men's national team as being a tremendous disappointment and a cause of misery in my life. They do nothing but break my heart. They infuriate me. They misplace back passes, send Barbados in on goal, etc. Right? Like, it's not just losing, it's losing to Trinidad and Tobago, or failing to beat Trinidad and Tobago and then failing to qualify for the World Cup, right? Like, that's humiliating. Nothing against my Trinidadian friends, but we're a nation of 350 million people. We should be able to find 11 people who can beat Trinidad and Tobago in a game of football.
Agreed.
And so my feeling has always been the United States sucks at soccer and always will. And this is a source of ongoing misery in my life. And in doing this research over the last week, I have realized that I was wrong on every possible level. So first off, in the very first World Cup in 1930, the U.S. finished third, which is the highest ever finish for any country outside of South America or Europe. The United States is the highest finishing country outside of South America or Europe, full stop.
Okay, to be fair, there was like 12 teams in the first World Cup.
Yes, I don't disagree with you, but still it's a statistic, Daniel, and you can't argue with statistics.
Not arguing, you know.
So then there's the fact that in 2002, when I personally desperately needed it because I was living in a furnished studio apartment in the midst of trying to recover from a mental health crisis and the worst breakup of all time. And you know, Daniel, I've had some bad breakups.
Yeah, I've seen them.
This was worse than those.
Okay, all right.
I was recovering from this mental health crisis, and the U.S. made it to the quarterfinals. They won a knockout game against Mexico. It was incredible. And so when I really needed the U.S. men's national team, in fact, they showed up for me amidst my loneliness and fragility. And so I should be grateful for that.
Can I jump in there? Because I think it's important to say that not only did they make the quarterfinals, they should have won that game.
They might have won that game.
They might have won that game. Look, they played against Germany. Michael Ballack, Miroslav Klose, like, you know, one of the high scoring players in the history of the World Cup. Their goalkeeper, Oliver Kahn, made a number of incredible saves. And there was a blatant handball. Blatant handball. Our Greg Berhalter, who we're going to mention his son later on, took a shot. It appeared at first that Oliver Kahn had saved it, but later it was clear in replays that there was a German defender who kept it out with his left hand. And in the age of VAR, that would have absolutely been a penalty kick. Now we all know penalty kicks can be missed, etc. But I'm just saying that, like, it was a 1-1 game. It was close, and the U.S. had a ton of chances. Landon Donovan was in on goal twice, 1-on-1 with Oliver Kahn, and couldn't put it away because Oliver Kahn made some incredible saves. So anyway.
Yeah, Oliver Kahn played his butt off that game, and I agree with you that year something special did happen and something more special might have happened. Exactly. And in fact, getting out of the group in 1994 was an incredible result. And then they played Brazil and lost 1-0, and Brazil should have had a red card, and that game might have gone differently. And so you could argue the U.S. has actually been a little unlucky in World Cups. But actually where they usually get is they go out in the round of 16, which is about right. Because I have to remind myself, the U.S. men's national team just doesn't have that great of a player base to work from. Like, I, of course, expect them to be very good because our women's hockey team is good and our cross-country skiers are good, and we generally overperform in athletics because we spend a lot of money on it in the U.S. But
the U.S. women's national team is incredible.
The U.S. women's national team is, certainly was the best in the world for many decades, might still be the best in the world. And so I have this expectation that we should be competing for the World Cup every time we go out. And then I'm devastated when we tie Trinidad and Tobago 1-1 on October 10th, 2017, the day that my book Turtles All the Way Down came out, thus ruining my publication date, not to make it about me. So the truth is, in 1994, we made it out of the group with a bunch of players who played in England and Germany's second and third, and in a couple cases, fourth divisions. There was no professional soccer league in the U.S. at the time. And now all of that has changed, right? Like there is a pretty good, not great, but pretty good professional soccer league in the United States. We have good players who play in the top leagues in Europe. We've got Timothy Weah, who's the son of Liberian president and former great footballer George Weah. We've got Weston McKennie. We've got our Lord and Savior Christian Pulisic. But I think we also need to remember, like there are over 100 English players in the Premier League. There are over 20 Spanish players in the Premier League. Like I'm not talking about who plays at Real Madrid and Barcelona. There's over 20 who play in England. And there's over 10 Irish players in the Premier League, and there are 4 Americans. The similar underrepresentation in Italy and Germany and Spain. We just don't have that many great players. Like we don't have a standout goalie right now. We don't have a standout striker. We aren't Brazil. And so if we make it to the round of 16 and then lose, which has historically been approximately our level, I shouldn't be that disappointed. I should understand like we are doing about as good as we can do.
Can I jump in there? Because I agree with you, especially about the strikers. However, our 2 strikers have really world-class, outstanding names.
True.
Just say them, and they're so fun to say. Ricardo Pepi.
Yep.
I love that name. Folarin Balogun, again, like world-class name. Can they finish? Not consistently, but they're really fun to say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think that there's a lot to recommend. Haji Wright is a great name.
A wonderful name.
You know, we've got some great names on the team. No getting around it.
Yeah. No, you got to.
I'm not
respect.
sure. Full respect. I'm not sure about the finishing quality, and then I'm not sure about our goalkeeping, which has historically been an American strength. And the line in England was always like, those Americans, they can't play with their feet, but they're pretty good with their hands.
Yeah,
which is
funny because now goalkeepers are asked now to play with their feet, which has
they got to be very good with their feet. Shut
the door on a lot of American goalkeepers. Shout out to that guy who played at Arsenal for a season, and then Mikel was like, "Bye." Can't even remember his name.
Matt Turner.
Oh, Matt Turner, poor guy. Great shot stopper. You know, terrible with his feet.
Yeah. We should mention, by the way, that there are a few figures in American soccer that, depending on your worldview, are either people who bridge the gap between the game and the American public, or people who make it impossible for us to ever compete on a truly international level. And among the top of them is Alexi Lawless, the soccer commentator, a former American defender, Ginger.
Famously,
red curly hair flowing to his shoulders back in the day. And, you know, we've got some good soccer commentators. We've got Rob Stone. We also have some bad soccer commentators like Alexi Lawless. So,
I've seen Alexi Lawless play live. Actually, the first game that I ever saw the World Cup was the very famous / infamous U.S. Colombia game in 1994.
In the Rose Bowl.
The game where at the Rose Bowl where Andres Escobar scored an own goal that he later lost his life, was killed when he returned to Colombia because of this own goal. So I was at that game, and I remember. So I'm of the two of us, I can say that I've seen Alexi Lawless in all his glory in 1994 play, and I agree with you on your sort of. There's a real blowhard quality to his commentating, and most of what he says I find inane. I don't think he's the problem, though. I think that the problem really is the hunger of the U.S. players. And I think that comes from soccer being a suburban sport and a kind of suburban middle-class sport. And I think the kids who play elsewhere in the world just play with more hunger. You know, there's more on at stake if you're Lucho Diaz, from Colombia, like, soccer is your savior, I had a friend and her son played on a pretty good team I think it was a Red Bulls academy team, and they went to play a few, like, they were like 14. They went to play a few team games in England. So they went on a tour, and she told me later that when the kid came back, he wouldn't say anything about the trip. It's like, how was the trip? Oh yeah, it was fine. Went to this museum, and he would say things, but never about the games. And finally, she was like, "Okay, son, what about the games?" And she was like, "Mom, we never touched the ball." So they're like the Red Bulls Academy team or whatever it was, the best players in New York from the Upper West Side and elsewhere, go to New York and play like go to England, play the Aston Villa, under 14s, and just, it's like, men against boys. They just never touch the ball. They get trounced and come back with their tail between their legs. And I think it's just, the training is harder elsewhere. The tactical understanding is more sophisticated. And then in the case of lots of places, people are playing with just more hunger because their lives depend on it.
Yeah, I also think we have a big pay-to-play problem in the United States, which is why soccer is such a suburban sport in the U.S. Because, in fact, when we were preparing for this, our producer, Sean, if you don't mind coming on for a second, you were like, I don't know a ton about soccer, but I can't help but notice I recognize some of these names.
Yeah, well, as someone that probably followed it closer, a bit closer in the 90s and growing up, like all of these people, I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, these guys played on the team, back in the 90s, or they're, coaches in the past 10 years or whatever. So, yeah, there's definitely, it feels, I mean, maybe nepotism is not a fair word here, and maybe you guys can get into some of the nuances of that, but it's hard to ignore at the same time, considering the very finite number of spots on the team.
No, I mean, we've got Gio Reyna, we've got Seb Berhalter, we've got Tim Weah. Like, these are famous last names in American football and global football. And I think that is not because of like fancy bloodlines or indeed even because of like nepotism on the level of, oh, you have a famous last name, so you're more likely to get selected for the national team. I think it's that, it's about the way we develop players. It's a pay to play game. Like, you have to pay thousands of dollars to be in some of these elite soccer clubs. And those who can afford the best training just have a better shot of becoming the best players. If you'd given Daniel the best club team in the world when he was 6 years old, and you'd told him, which his parents would never do, unfortunately, stop paying attention to school, focus on football, do not become a doctor, do not become a writer, focus on what matters, I genuinely think he would have had a shot. And there's a lot of kids like that.
To be fair, I think they did say, do not become a writer. I think that was actually said. So, yeah. I mean, again, I hesitate to say that I could have done gotten a junior college scholarship to play Birmingham Southern, maybe, I don't know. But I think you're onto something. I remember talking to a friend of mine, college professor in Texas, Mexican guy, his son, goalkeeper. And one day, his son announced, he's like, Mom, Dad, he's like, soccer is going to lift this family out of poverty. And my friend was like, looking around, he's like, what are you talking? It's like, wait a second. What in our life has led you to believe we're living in poverty? Like, I teach at the University of Texas. Like,
I have tenure.
I have tenure. Your mom is, is a professional. Like, what are you talking about? And then it was just this conversation was like, look, all right, man, you go, whatever you need to justify this to give it your all, you go for it. But he told the story with this look of just absolute, the things kids say, but I think there's something about that, like that level of passion of a player, like, Lucho Diaz, like I mentioned him earlier, suburban U.S. kids don't have that. And we can thank our quality of life for a lot of things, but maybe not for that.
I think you need a mix of passion and resources, though, because you have to have the resources surrounding you to be able to develop into a good player. Like, this is the problem with the Sierra Leonean national team, right? Is that they just don't have the resources to develop their best players. And, whereas a country like Nigeria does have more resources to develop their best players. So I think it depends. I think you need to hit some kind of,
Balance.
I think that's part of what makes it hard, some kind of balance. But I think in the US, we're doing it all wrong. We're starting to get some things right. We're starting to do a better job of developing players. But I also think there's something to recommend, like not having a system like they have in England where, you bomb out at the age of 11 or at the age of 14 or at the age of 16. And you're told, I'm sorry, you're never going to be able to live this dream. And you've put all your eggs into that metaphorical basket. And it's very difficult to do anything else with your life. I see that all the time as an AFC Wimbledon fan. We get kids from other academies, from Premier League academies, who end up at AFC Wimbledon, and they're really limited in some of their educational opportunities because they've been told to focus so much on football. So I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's a complicated story. And the point of a country, of course, is not necessarily to make great footballers.
Right. That's true. That's absolutely true. I remember seeing a video of Jack Grealish at the England camp, and someone held up a map of England, and they were like, "So can you point to where you're from?" And he had he couldn't. Yeah. He just didn't know. And my first reaction was kind of shock and I'll be honest, a little like titters and laughter. And then I was like, man, he's been failed by the system, and thank God he has an incredible athletic talent, and he can he's not going to go hungry. But what if he was just 15% worse? He would not be in the Premier League. He wouldn't be a national team player. He would, and he has not been given any education to even know where his hometown is on a map of England. Which is nuts. But yeah, I agree.
Daniel, are you saying that you also have trouble finding Indianapolis on a map? That's why you agree?
No, I think I know where Indiana is. If you showed me the 50 states, I could find Indiana, and then I would just put Indianapolis in the middle somewhere.
That's right? Actually how they did it. They drew a line down the center of the horizontally and vertically, and they were like, "Oh, there's a river there. That's where we'll build our capital," and that's how Indianapolis came to be. No joke.
That's actually true. That's a fact.
Yeah, no, that's a true story. Shout out to the Indiana legislature back in 1839. All right, Daniel, I think we have delved adequately deep into the U.S. men's national team. I think the goal for the USMNT in this cycle is to make it to the knockout rounds, maybe to win one knockout game, make it to the last 16. If we can go further than that, that'd be amazing, but that's got to be the goal.
That sounds great. You've made me want to move the U.S., bump us up a couple places. So in my loyalty hierarchy. So you did your job.
That's good to hear.
Well done.
Good to hear.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll be right back after a quick break. Okay, so we're back on the away end. And John, I want to tell you a story about a soccer club called Left Wing FC. I played for many years with Left Wing FC. When I moved to the Bay Area, my sister and her wife were already playing on Left Wing FC. And it was the story they told me was that it was basically a bunch of activists blocked the Bay Bridge as a protest against the imminent second war in Iraq. We're talking about George W. Bush.
This would have been 2002, 2003.
Exactly. So these were huge protests. You can go back and find the video of this on YouTube, I'm sure. 2002, they blocked the Bay Bridge. And then a lot of these folks realized they were really out of shape when they had to run from the cops. So as a result of this sort of kind of striking and sudden awareness of their own decrepitude and lack of athleticism, they were like, we need to start getting in shape, for the next protest. And they did it with soccer. And they did it specifically with a set of values and ideals, which I think are really lovely. One, the game is open to all. The score is always 2-2. And we're not here to win. We're here to learn, you know? And so I played with this group, and there was a kind of an offshoot of this group that was a little bit more competitive. So we'd play these games on Sundays, and then say Wednesday nights, we would play our league games. And those were competitive, but the Sunday games were really just all about family and friends and, similar group, you know, people in Oakland is basically like an extension of LA in some ways. And so a lot of people were constantly coming and going from LA, and there was a similar group formed in LA called Futbolistas. And about 10, 12 years ago, we started something called Copa Comunidad, which is just alternating years, either in LA or in Oakland. Everyone from LA would come up, and we would, you know, have a weekend of soccer and parties, and then everyone would go the next year down to LA. Super fun. And I played with this group for a long time, basically until my youngest son was born. And then, you know, the kind of like lackadaisical California, you know, hippie activist vibe was like really tough, because when you have a young kid, I need the game to start at the time it's going to start, because I need to go back home, you know? and you know, everyone's activists and organizers and teachers, and, you know, and weekends, they're just like loosey-goosey. And I'm like, it's like 10, we're playing at 10 o'clock, right? And you show up at like 10 o'clock and like no one's there. And they like 11 o'clock, people start playing. And I was just like, and I moved to like meet up where you like pay money to play and have to show up at the time. And so I gave in to the kind of strictures of domestic life and kind of stopped playing. Now, I'm going to all through this because last weekend I was back in Oakland to visit my family, and my nieces have started playing with Left Wing FC. And they're 17 and 14. And my sister and her wife still go out and they don't play anymore, but they sort of kind of watch and cheer. And so they were like, Tio Dani, you want to play with us? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then something happened, which is actually a great thing if you like, you know, soccer stuff. I had not brought any soccer stuff. So I was in this situation where I was morally obligated to go buy soccer gear, which is like a great feeling.
A terrible thing.
It's a wonderful excuse. You're like, you know, I could either be a bad uncle or I could, you know, go buy some shoes. So I went to the soccer store in El Cerrito, which is a town next to Oakland. And I'm looking. And I want to spend too much, but I also want to buy something that I'm never going to wear again. And I have this conundrum. And I want to show you these shoes. And I want to preface this by saying, I love the color. And two, they were on sale. And these are the shoes.
Ooh,
but now,
yes.
Do you see what they say on there?
No, what do they say?
So
I can't see.
Maybe you'll recognize that.
Oh, they're Real Madrid shoes.
They're Real Madrid shoes.
Ooh, yikes.
Okay, so they were $50, which is a really good price. They're purple, which I love.
By the way, look at my shoes.
Oh, those are nice. Those are really nice.
Kind of match.
Yeah,
yours.
they kind of match. So these are Adidas Sambas, and they are purple, and they have this one defect, which is that they say Real Madrid on them, and they have the Real Madrid logo on the back. And I'm just wondering, John, this whole setup was because I ended up sort of being like, well, the price is right, the color's nice, no one's going to know. And then I just, you know, and I get to be a good uncle. So I went to go play, to my triumphant / competent return to action with Left Wing FC. And it was really fun. I played with my nieces and saw a bunch of old friends. But I was wearing Real Madrid shoes. And I was wondering, if you were in a similar situation, would you have bought red, say, Man United shoes?
That's going to be a hard no for me. That's going to be a hard no. Not least because of the... No, yeah, I would not have done that. I would.
But what if the other shoes were like these were half off? Because I presume most people aren't hip enough to love purple shoes.
I think it's more that most people are too hip to love Real Madrid.
Okay, we're talking about like the most popular club in the world, and no disrespect to your club or to any others, but like Real Madrid is objectively like a gigantic club with fans everywhere in every little last nook and cranny of this planet of ours. So I think that's not
except
true,
Oakland. Except Oakland.
That is true, actually. I mean, I will say that at Left Wing FC, there were no Madrid fans because Madrid was, it's a very political team. Madrid is the team of Franco, to the point where one time we were looking at maybe getting an away jersey, and our home jerseys were red, obviously. And I meekly suggested that we get white jerseys, and I was like nearly like excommunicated from this group of leftists. I would have to do like a kind of self-criticism. And I was like, look, I just meant white. I didn't mean like Franco Real Madrid white. I just meant white jerseys. But I had to explain myself. So I understand maybe among left wing, like no one wears Real Madrid gear. Certainly you don't see it much. It's interesting. I think I made a choice, and it was an economical choice, and it was a stylistic choice. And I got to be a good uncle.
It's definitely good to be a good uncle, and it's good to have cool purple shoes. I wonder if you could sort of decorate the Madridness off of them somehow to change the vibe. If you could have maybe your nieces paint the white part of the shoes so that it doesn't have the Real Madrid logo on it anymore.
I've thought about that. Yeah, I like Madrid as a city. Lovely,
great city.
Town. Great city. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question to bring up. Unresolved.
Well, I don't think I feel that strongly about fashion in the end. I feel, I'd rather wear the colors and logo of almost any other team than Manchester United. And I feel similarly about Real Madrid just because they beat Liverpool in the Champions League final so many times over the years. So I would not have done that. But also I'm less price sensitive than you are. And that's a character flaw of mine.
Yeah. I mean, I've splurged. Believe me, I've splurged. I went with my older son to the Emirates he probably can't do a semester of college because of that, but it was worth it. So I just think in the end that no one has to know, although I did just tell everyone and show everyone. But I just wanted shoes that I would be happy to wear later, like because they're purple and they seem cool. At least to me, it's my shtick, my vibe, my style. And I didn't want to buy shoes that I was never going to wear again. So
I get that, and I like that we both wear Adidas Sambas well into our 40s.
Yeah. I mean, I've been Adidas since I was, a child. So kind of can't get over it.
Hey, listen, before we go, we need to give a shout out to Button City FC, Daniel. Ryan from New Mexico wrote to tell us about his club team, which just won their first trophy. It is a team of game developers whose jerseys are absolute bangers. If you are on YouTube, you can see them now. We just wanted to show you. It's very clear that these folks are having a lot of fun. And I mean, the crest is special.
Wow. It's a beauty. And they also, in the photo that Ryan sent us, not only do they all have these really lovely jerseys, and they're all, doing that thing where you bite the metal, they have a flag. That's so cool. Left Wing had a flag. My friend Jacob probably still has it hanging on his wall. I think it's important for a club to have a flag. And, big congrats to Button City FC and Ryan. Thanks for listening. And again, if you're on YouTube, you'll appreciate these photos for sure. John, I think that's all the time we have.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, as it always is, to talk football with you. Up the men's national team in the United States, and up Button City FC.
Absolutely. And up purple sneakers, but not from Real Madrid. Okay, fair enough. Remember, you can write us at awayendpod@gmail.com. And thanks to our producer, Sean and Kurt, who make everything work. John, I'll see you next week, man.
Can't wait.